Alright, so in this video I am going to show you how to hang an acoustic panel on the wall. This is one of the 100,000,000 ways to do it. Alright, I'm using this kind of configuration at the top. Got a wood screw there, in here to hold that on. That doesn't matter. What matters is this hook. Alright, it's not screwed in yet. I just got it positioned. Alright, so my hook is going to be in there. It has to be in a certain amount for effective thread. Alright, and I'm going about that far. Alright, so there it is. A little further. Position my hook where I'm going to want it. Alright. Now that's not where it's going to be along the axis, but that's the height from inside the wood screwed in that I want. Alright. And this eye hook, I need to know where I need to put this on the wall. How do we figure that out? Well, that's what I'm going to show you how to do. Because it's going to be sticking out of the wall and hooking into this. And I'm using a fine thread here to allow, when I screw this into the wall, I can do in and out measurements. So this is going to be an adjustable panel. I can adjust it out probably 4 inches all the way into like 2 inches from the wall, maybe even an inch. Alright, so let's go do this. Now the first thing you're going to want to know is the measurement of your panel. This panel is 53.5 inches long and 34 inches wide. Alright, so now that you know how long and how wide your panel is, well, you're going to need a stud finder and a tape measure, a mechanical pencil with an eraser. I got my mirror here with my helper here, tripod, and I've already found my first reflection from my monitor. It's about right here in the center, okay? The panel's 34 inches wide by 53.5 inches long. So, set my stud finder over here, because we are going to have to find the studs. First thing you want to do is find out how far from the ground you want this, alright? So, how far from the ground do you want your panel? That's where you need to start your tape measure, alright? Lock your tape measure, and I got more than enough here, alright? So if I want my panel to be about right, let's say about that high, alright? What you do is you find it was 53.5 inches long, right? So from here to up here, you mark off 53.5 inches for the top of your panel. Alright? That's the top of my panel. The bottom of the panel, you can go ahead and mark the bottom. Alright, you don't really need to mark the bottom, but to give you an idea of what it's going to look like. So, I've marked the top of my panel, I've marked the bottom. Well, now we got to see how far over I need it. Well, there's a light socket here, so I need to clear that. But I also need to have my panel in my reflection point. Also, if I need to move my monitors back and forward when I'm doing my acoustic measurement, I'll have some wiggle room, alright, in here. So, this light socket is 6.5 inches from the side of this corner bass trap that I built, alright. So I measure off 6.5. I'm going to go a ½ inch further than that with my panel from this light socket. So it's about right here, alright. So I know you can't see these marks, but the edge of my panel is going to be right here. The bottom's going to be right here. The top's going to be up here. Now it's 34 inches wide. Alright? So I go 34 inches wide. Mark it. Draw a line. I can see and get a visualization of how wide my panel is going to be. I see the top. Now, if you want to have more lines for your top, here's all you do. Remember where you marked it at the top? Go from the ground, from your floor, to where you marked the top of your panel beam. 69.5 inches, alright? So, all I gotta do is carry that measurement right here. Mark 69.5, draw a little line. 69.5, draw a little line. And I see a little line outline where my panel is going to be, and I can pretty much tell where the bottom is going to be. So, I got an idea where I want my panel. Now I'm going to find the center of my panel. Half of 34 is 17. The center of my panel is right here. Alright? Now, you need to find your studs. And this is where it gets tricky because your studs may not always be centered perfectly on your panel. Alright? So I can use my stud finder. There's a stud right there. Find the edges. Mark where the center of my stud is. Right stud. Same thing for the other one. I got 16 off center. So I know 16 inches from there where the stud's going to be. Should be about right here. Alright, when you're using your stud finder, you'll find the edge, but then you need to go a little bit more till the edge goes away, and it's in the center of that location. So here's my 2 stud markings. Now, that's not where I'm drilling, that's just where my studs are. So I can line everything up and down. Sorry about the echo, by the way. I don't have all my treatment up, obviously. So I know where my studs are. Now, here comes the next part. Alright, so I have my finger on the wall so my camera can focus, and I know the lighting's kind of bad, but you can deal with it, alright? So there's a stud. There's my other stud, alright? So, here's the top of my panel. I drew a little line for the top of my panel, alright? And I can visualize the top of my panel. So, aligning with this stud mark to the top of my panel, I need to find out how far from the top of my panel my hook is, alright? So I can draw, so I can put a mark, and then also drill into my stud that's behind this wall so I can put my eye hook, alright? So I need to find out from the top of my panel how far down my eye hook needs to be inside of the stud, okay? But there's also another measurement you're going to do, and that has to do with from the left to the right, and we'll get to that in a second. So the next step, top of the panel, here's my stud line. How far down does this need to go to match up with my hook? So the first thing you gotta do is you gotta attach your actual mounting surface onto your panel, whatever kind of configuration you use, alright? And then you gotta say, how much of this thread do I want in there? Well, I want it about right there, right? So then you need to find, remember from the top of the panel, which is it's kind of hard to see, but from here, now you gotta think about this mating surface on the inside, because that's where your eye hook's gonna chill at, alright? Your eye hook is gonna mate on the inside. So you need to measure from the top of your panel to the inside of the hook. So you get your tape measure, alright, bust it out, and you basically measure from there to the top of my panel, which for me is 1 3/8, alright? So 1 3/8 is how far my eye hook, the top of this eye hook, needs to be. So that's how you do it. So then I'm going to go over to the wall and I'm going to measure down 1 3/8 for my hook, and that's where I'm supposed to drill my hole. Alright, so I measured down 1 3/8 from the top of my panel that I marked earlier, and that's 1 3/8 down, and I wrote drill next to it so I'll know what I need to do with that X. And it is on my stud line. I kind of eyed it, but you always need to re-verify that it is on your stud line, so I'm just going to go like this. Yeah. Probably come over just a hair, so I'll remember that. It needs to come over just a little bit, but that is where I'm going to drill. And it is 1 3/8 from the top, which is where my hook is going to chill, and that is where this eye hook is going to go in. Alright? And I'm using fine threads, as I've said, so I can make minute adjustments in and out. Every time I go in, it'll move this in closer. When I go out, of course, it'll bring it out. But every turn, alright, with the fine threads, you can use this. It will thread if you use the correct diameter drill bit, alright? With this smaller thread tooth right here for this thread pitch, when you screw out, every turn will move it a certain amount, okay? Now they do sell eye hooks with the wood screw design. However, every turn, alright, this is an eye hook, but just an example, every turn, 180 degrees, is going to move it out even further. So you won't have the exact capabilities and degrees of in and out minute measurements as with this because of the fine tooth on the threads, alright? Something to think about. Here's my other stud from my other side, and I went down 1 3/8. I measure 69.5 inches from the ground, remember? That gives me the top of my panel. We did that earlier, so I know if I measure 69.5, that's about where the top of my panel is going to be, alright? And that's where I'm going to drill for that one. Now, when you do this drilling, you need to make sure that you're getting effective drilling. And that means that you need to measure how far you need to drill, alright? I'm going to drill all the way down. It's a little further than I need, but it takes up the whole shank right there, as you can see. So that's how far I'm going to drill into the wall into my stud. Alright, so I've drilled. Now, That's the most important step. You have to drill in your studs. I mean, you could use some anchors if you want. It's at your own risk. It depends on the thickness of your drywall. If you got an inch thick, I think I got 3/4 of an inch thick drywall, so this panel only weighs like 6 pounds. I already weighed it. It's really light. All right, it's an OC 703 interior with some furring strips on the outside. I got another video on all that stuff. Now, so, got my holes drilled. Screw these bad boys in, all right? You're not going to see that, so the video is going to cut away for that. But you'll screw those in, and we'll get to that in a second. Now the next step is, we need to find out how far over on our panel our hook actually needs to go. Because check this out. My panel outline's right here. This isn't perfectly center from both sides, all right? So I'm going to screw these in and I'll give you an idea of what I'm talking about. So a quick way of screwing these into the wall is you can turn them by finger. However, if you use a long device like this, you probably would figure this out yourself. Hopefully, work smarter, not harder, right? Just put it in there. Do this number here. Turn it in, all right? Makes it a lot quicker. Now, how far in does that need to go? I'll show you. Alright, so I need to find out how far, I want my panel for starters, before I start my measurements, I'm going to go with 2.5 inches from the wall. And you can either guesstimate and take your panel down and keep doing this, but I'm going to get it all in one go, and this is how you do it. You put your hook on here, right? This is how it's going to look. Alright? Now, what you need to do in order to find this information out is you need to go to your panel. Wherever you're going to drill at, you need to kind of put it in that location, alright? Alright, so I kind of stuck it in there just so it hold. I got the hammer holding it. Now, this isn't where I'm going to drill along the axis. We still need to figure that out. And that's a real important one that you want to get right. Now, how far to get 2.5 inches when I need to go? Well, that's simple. All I do is I measure from the edge of my panel to the apex where it would be hanging inside this hook. Alright, for me that's about 1/2 inch. Whatever my measurement is on the wall, I add 1/2 inch to it. Let's go check that out. Now it's kind of hard for you to see this, alright, but to the inside of the eyelet there, not on the outside, to the inside, alright? And if I go 1/2 inch out, that gives me about 2 1/4, so I need to bring my eye hook out, but you get an idea. So I need to come out about 1/4 inch in order to get 2.5 inches from the wall, because I'm at 1/2 inch to the inside of that eyelet, and that would give me 2 1/4. So like I said, I need to bring it out a little bit so I can get 2.5. And you don't need to see that, but that's what I need to do. Alright, so now I got my eye hooks set. Alright, but now one of the most important parts is, where do I screw that in to match up with the eye hooks and to actually have my panel positioned properly? Well, I got my distance set, I got my height set for my panel. Now I need to know along the axis here where I need to drill that. And here's how you do that. I have the lines here for the edge of my panel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure from the edge of my panel to the center of this eye hook. Alright, so from the edge of my panel in to the center of this eye hook, that is where the center of my hook needs to be on the actual cross member. Alright? Now in order to transfer this onto your panel, you're going to need to know where your hook is going to be and where you need to drill along the axis of that cross member. So I got my lines, you can't see them on the video, but I got a line here and I got a line over here which represents 34 inches for my panel. So my panel is going to be, alright, and I can see the top, but that doesn't matter. You need to measure from your edge to the center of your eye hook. So 12 1/4 inches, you need to write that down. So, alright, now for the other side, all you do is I have this line here. You probably can't see it like I said, but it's a really light pencil mark. I measure from there to the inside to the center of this, and I get 6 1/2. So 12 1/4 and 6 1/2. I will go onto my cross member and make those marks, and then we'll continue from there. Alright, so you need to visualize this, okay? You have to pretend like you're picking up your panel and you're setting it on the wall so you do your correct measurements. You don't want to do your 12 1/4 over there and then your 6 1/2 over here, because then you'll be backwards. Alright, and your panel's going to be off center. So in your mind, pick this up and say, if I take this to the wall, where is it going to be? Well, I know this side is going to be my 12 1/4, and that's going to be my 6 1/2. Mark my 12 1/4 on here. Little mark. That's where I need to drill for that one. Come over here. Add 6 1/2. That's where I need to drill in for that one. I'm going to drill into here, all right? Now, as you can see, it's not centered. That doesn't really frickin' matter. You're not going to get always lucky to where your studs are going to be directly where this thing's going to be perfectly, like right here, or perfectly in the center, all right? For where I needed my panel, it's going to be off center. Now, that doesn't matter because they're both going to distribute the weight evenly. It's a really light panel. It weighs like, I don't know, 6 or 7 pounds now that I have this piece of wood on there. It's really light. One hook is plenty enough to hold it. But if I only had one hook, it's going to, of course, teeter-totter. So what also these 2 hooks will do is, if when I put this up there, if it's off center, like leaning left and right for the top, all right, what I could do is I could adjust this out. All right, and I'll show you that in a second. Now I'm actually going to remove this to drill my holes, all right? So when we come back, I'll have my holes drilled. Oh, what the hell, you guys can watch me drill it, right? So I carried my markings onto the top. I got my piece of wood here to protect my table, all right? Just going to put it on there. Now I can't put this in the center, by the way, because if I put it to the center, it's going to be rubbing up against my panel. So they're going to be off center a little bit. It's going to be more high than low. You probably don't know what the hell I'm talking about, but whatever. I give it a nice little push, all right, so I can make sure I'm seated correctly. And I'm off a little bit, so right there. You gotta be really... There we go. Now I remember when I did this, how far in it was. But whenever you do all your measurements, you might want to take a Sharpie, all right? This isn't a Sharpie. And mark on here, because you need to make sure you screw this in that distance. Mine was to the top of the thread. I just used that as my guide for the top of the thread. So I know I just need to screw it into the top of this thread with it facing this way. And they'll both be the same distance in or out. And it's better to do it while this cross member is off of the panel. It makes it easier. Alright, so I got both my hooks screwed on there. I'm going to reattach this and then we're going to go hang this. Let's see if I got it all correct. Alright. So let's do this. This is the easiest way for her to hang it. For me, anyway. Just grab it right here, kind of lift it. I have my hooks. Everything lines up just perfect, because I am a fucking scientist. The only thing is, it kind of goes in at the bottom, so I will need to beef up my spacer down there. Alright, so for the back of the panels, for the spacers at the very bottom, I got my piece of wood, and then I have some really dense foam that I've super glued on there to pad it from the wall. But there it is. This one, I readjusted it. It's 2.5 inches from the wall. Alright, so that is how you can hang a panel. Hope you guys liked the video. If you did, go ahead and give me a like. Subscribe. My next video I'm going to be making is ceiling clouds. So if you're watching this, I probably already made the video, obviously. Alright. Peace out, yo.